What's up, guys? So today I want to really begin to break down a teaching that is extremely uncomfortable for a lot of people. Honestly, I've lost so many relationships over this. Um, it's a hard subject. It's one that causes such cognitive dissonance, but it's necessary. Okay. Um, why preach about this is one of the questions I was asked by someone who said, I am actually believing a lot of what you're saying, but has God told you to teach this to the church? One, I don't think God is an author of confusion. I don't think that God wants to hide truth from the church. I can explain some of my process emotionally before getting into a bunch of scripture, but when I was first approached with this idea, it was something that really jarred me at first, and I had to wonder why, and it was something that I didn't want to necessarily adopt as a belief. I didn't believe what I'm about to preach, but the idea that hell, the hell that I believed in might not be real or might not be what I thought it was very, very, very uncomfortable. Okay, so when I one day suddenly realized I had already kind of been preaching this, but I was preaching what a lot of the concepts of hell actually are. I was also preaching this other hell that we are all taught to believe alongside this other teaching. So I was like, well, God is a consuming fire, or God is a refining fire, and God is, right? If we're going to look to Scripture for evidence of who God is, and if that's where we're going to begin to develop our concept of who the God of this book is. Again, it's difficult, okay? But when I realized the weight that I had been carrying in believing that I could potentially end up in this place, okay? I didn't realize how heavy that burden was, and how many different teachings, denominations, belief structures, interpretations, and you're sitting here hoping that you have the right one because you don't want to go to this place where your skin is going to be regenerative but burning forever, where worms are going to be constantly eating your flesh, where you're going to be constantly screaming out about whatever secret sin may have had you held in this life, and or open sin or whatever. And I could go on, and I'd get more and more into the fringes of this group believes this group believes this group believes this. And even within the classical, mainstream kinds of teachings around hell, there are still three different hells that are primarily talked about or primarily preached. And, one of those is nihilism, that you're absolutely destroyed. You're not immortal, that you are just wiped out of existence, like you had never even been born, right? The other one is what I just discussed, the regenerative skin, the worms eating you, and, another one is just kind of this outer darkness type of concept, like you're not really in the presence of God, and it's just all of the things that were in your flesh are manifesting in this afterlife place that is eternal torment and eternal darkness, and you just don't have the presence of God, so you're kind of forever living in that my God, why hast thou forsaken me moment. And then we can go further. We can go into purgatory. We can go into some of this, the similar to purgatory concepts that are preached in some other religions and or Judeo-Christian types of combinations or hybrids. Okay, and I don't know that I know every version of hell that's out there, you know. But what I want to start talking about, I want to preface by saying that if you believe in hell, that does not, by virtue, make you a bad person. I think when I first radically shifted on this and started to really see it and dig it out of scripture, that can be a real scary thing, because when we're in an evangelistic mindset, we're in that constant sales mentality, but we're also in that very angry if you don't believe me or agree with me mentality that can potentially create something very toxic, okay? Now, when I believed it, I realized there were a lot of things that were very toxic within myself that had come out of the belief in hell. And I became so angry at myself that I started to take that anger out on other people. And I could see people who were operating in the bad fruit of this belief and the toxicity that I'm talking about. But I was blind for so long as I began to fight this to those who believed this concept who were not at all in the toxicity, okay? So I'm not here to say right or wrong necessarily, but I am here to do an accountability check on how we're interpreting certain things and where things came from, and knowing history, knowing interpretation, knowing original language and how that translates. And I'm not going to be able, we're already 7 minutes in, I haven't even started. I'm not going to be able to cover every single passage in one video. I'm pretty sure that this video alone, which is just a very small piece, is going to be very, very long. So I'm going to try to make a few parts, because when I finish, I don't think you're going to be questioning so much the things that I did cover as much as you're going to be questioning the things I didn't cover. And that can lead to a feeling of being deceived, or a feeling of I must not have been thorough. And really all it's about is I'm going to make some more videos. I'm going to start in the Old Testament, work towards a New Testament, and I believe that a really accountable way to do a Bible study is to chronologically move from beginning to end. So start with a blank slate. And I really wish I had a whiteboard behind me where I could just start writing some things down, because if we're starting with a blank slate and not a preconceived notion, then we have something we can build upon, okay? So we're saying, if I was forming this religion out of what is being told to me in this book, what does that religion look like aside from what I've already been taught, aside from my preconceived notions? Because Hades, I'm jumping forward a little bit, but I'm not in the scriptures yet, so it's fair game, okay? In Greek culture, okay, there was the god of the underworld whose name was Hades, okay? And the underworld of Hades is much, much closer to anything that we would typically preach today to be hell than anything that's actually discovered or discussed in the context of Scripture, okay? When the word that is now commonly translated into the word hell, when that word was Sheol in the Old Testament, that was a Hebrew word, okay? And I know some is Sanskrit, some's Hebrew, but Sheol is the word that you're going to consistently see being translated into the word hell. And as we get into the New Testament, we get into a Greek culture, okay? And the New Testament is written in Greek language. the word Hades was the closest approximation to the word Sheol because it represented essentially the concepts of death and burial and all of these things. Okay? So if we're not careful, being a 14th century interpreter, we are going to assimilate those concepts. Now, what makes this problem compounded is the fact that Dante's Inferno and Paradise Lost, Milton's Paradise Lost, those were written to create this concept of something that was a lot closer to Hades, but it was the 9 rings of hell. It was the all this different stuff that you hear about today, right? But there's no 9 rings of hell, discussed in the Bible. None of that is at all discussed. The monsters in Dante's Inferno, the creatures that come out of Greek literature, and these continue to be seen in what we teach about hell and what was being taught about hell as indulgences were being sold, promoted by these 2 famous plays in the 14th century. Okay? So that's just a tiny bit of background, but if you already believe these things and then you start looking at these scriptures for those things that you already have in here, then you are going to extrapolate or read between the lines to start trying to pull that stuff out because you already believe in it. And that's what happened with these interpreters, because if you look at any version of the Bible that has been published in our American English language, okay, there is not one single translation you can put beside each other that have a consistency in which passages should be interpreted into this word hell. That's because there's nothing in the original language that separates it. So with the word Satan, right? So the word Satan, and this is just kind of like a nugget that's not actually what I'm talking about right now, but it's also kind of like, is there are 2 ways to use the word Satan in the way that the Bible's written, okay? Satan, the word Satan, not the name, right? The term Satan means opponent or challenger or whoever is on the other side of an issue. So if you had 2 people that were debating, person A would be Satan to person B. Person B would be Satan to person A. Okay, it's a neutral term that does not mean evil or bad or anything like that, okay, in this context. Okay, there is another one, so stay with me, okay? But this is important to note, especially when the angel of the Lord that stands in front of Balaam's donkey, if you look at the original word, you're going to see, just open up, Strong's, and you will see that word for angel of the Lord that stood in front of the donkey, it says Satan stood in front of the donkey. Okay? Now, that does not mean that there isn't another interpretation where we would say this is literally a personage that is a Satan. Okay? And that's when we add the ha in front of it. Okay? So there's a certain kind of like a consonant, and I might be saying that wrong, that goes in front of the word Satan that then allows that to be personified into a personage or a specific individual, okay? And it's very important in a whole nother study that we start pulling apart when a person's being talked about, when an opponent's being talked about, when we're just talking about a nation that's against another nation, and when we're actually talking about what we would typically call like the devil, okay? or the enemy, or, and there's different interpretations of that. Jewish culture historically has viewed that as an angel that tempts man in behalf of God, hoping that man will succeed. But he issues that temptation in agreement with God as an angel, okay? And then you have your mainstream concepts of this is a challenger of God, like this is an archangel, fallen angel, the musician in heaven. You got all these different kinds of like variations of what the devil is, what Satan is, what the third of the angels that fell are, who the serpent in the garden is, and they're very interesting studies. But coming back to this, when we're talking about hell and we're talking about putting different translations together, 15 minutes in and I haven't started in the scriptures, sorry. But when we're talking about putting these together and they don't agree at all, not even close. In fact, there's one version that doesn't use it at all. And that version was interpreted by people who actually speak the language. Not just scholars, but people who grew up in this language. And that'll be Young's literal translation. Okay? Not one single time is the word hell in that one. But the reason that they all disagree is because there is no way within the language itself to distinguish what should and should not be translated into this word. Because this word, the way we've interpreted it today, did not exist in the language of that day. So what is it, and the biggest question that people are constantly asking immediately is, what did Jesus save us from, and that is skipping way, way forward. But there are answers to that, okay? Jesus saved us from a lot more than a afterlife place of eternal torment, okay? You were already weeping, gnashing your teeth in this world, right? He came, he set you free from addictions, he set you free from hate, selfishness, whatever, hopefully. You got free from those things. There's a lot of people carrying around that name who are more ensnared by those things than anyone, but without going there, just if you have been changed or feel like you've been changed by Jesus, then would you not equate your former state to a version of hell on earth and say Jesus definitely saved you from something that's in the past and not something that's in the future? Or not necessarily something that's in the future. You can still believe in hell when we're done with this, okay? I'm not here to change your mind. I'm just here to give you some tools and equip you, and just some things that you can talk about and maybe look at, and maybe just, if anything else, if you totally disagree with me, maybe it's just going to make you stronger in what you already believe, okay? So I'm not here to bully. I'm not here to cause damage, and I know a lot of people think by virtue this message causes so much damage, people will not let you near their congregation when you're preaching this kind of stuff. It if you have any kind of influence, but it is scary for people, and it's something that people will defend with such anger and such passion, because a lot of their belief systems hinge on this. And I would challenge a few things in that, but I don't want to make assumptions about somebody's character based on their beliefs, okay? Now, I can observe, and if I observe some of those things happening, then if we're close and we have that respect, I could say, hey, do you think that maybe these fruits are coming from this root of this belief system? Just because I've been there and I've experienced that, I've seen that coming out of myself. But some of the best people I know on earth do not agree with me on this, and they believe in hell. I don't hear them talking about it all the time, actually probably never, but even though they believe in it, they're amazing, wonderful people that I'm not going to sit here and condemn. So I'm not here to condemn people who don't agree with me. I'm not here to condemn people who believe differently. I have in the past approached this very passionately, and I'm trying my best to give now 20 minutes of kind of disclaimers before jumping in, and I'm almost done with the disclaimers, I think. But one more that I want to talk about is association, like word association. And having come out of, at one point in time, a Pentecostal holiness background, I don't want to insult Pentecostals, but for people who are not Pentecostal, who see that, who believe that they see that is not what they believe. I just want to make a point there that I don't know a better example to use that would register with Pentecostals. So Pentecostals, you're probably not going to get anything out of this part because you believe in holiness, okay? And by holiness, I'm putting that in quotations. And this is what I'm going to say about that, is within that culture, and again, I do not mean to be insulting, and please forgive me if you feel insulted by this, if you're Pentecostal, okay? But what happens there is, at some point in time, this standard of women shouldn't cut their hair, have to wear dresses, can't wear makeup, in some cases can't wear the color red, can't braid their hair, can't wear jewelry, can't go to the movies or participate in worldly things, can't tan because it's a false appearance, can't have a TV in your home because it's abomination, and you go down this list. That all got attached to the word holiness. So they started preaching, this is holiness. Our standard is holiness, And, even in Muslim culture, when they wear the burqas, it's very, very similar. It's a modesty issue. And we definitely don't want to overcorrect and go into complete opposite of modesty, right? And that's a whole nother discussion that is supercharged with emotion on all sides, because there are so many layers and so many different ways to approach that conversation that you just to remain respectful, it needs to be balanced, So leaving that one completely alone for now, because people just made all sorts of judgments about me, I'm sure, without me saying anything, and I can guarantee if you made those judgments, you're wrong. I don't have time to defend it right now. So when they attached all of these things to the word holiness, okay, now every time they hear the word holiness or holy in Scripture, their mind flashes an image of these standards, okay, of women in dresses and not wearing makeup and having their long hair, and you can spot one pretty easily once you know these standards, right? But then you begin to hear them preach things like, without holiness, no man can see God. So now they're saying without this standard, no man can see God, because they've replaced the word holiness with this other word that they've attached to it, and they feel like these two are joined, okay? And not to say that I want to start an argument with Pentecostals on this right now, but I want to show how easy it is to start getting a word confused with another word, and when we have a preconceived notion, then we start to hear things that we're like, there's no way that the Bible's not saying that this standard exists, because the word holiness is everywhere. And so then we can be like, well, there's no way that this version of hell that we believe in doesn't exist, because I can see all these passages talking about it, but there's association going on, okay? So I don't know if I want to start necessarily in the first passage that is interpreted among the various translations as the word hell, and not in every version. I think I'm going to start where the word Sheol is first mentioned, because I want to get into this before I'm 30 minutes into this video. And also, like the word hell, like the the Anglo-Saxon word hell, okay, is the root word for helmet. Okay, so when you put a helmet on, it comes from that word, because ultimately the word means. These words are conceptual, and not as literal as what English is today. Okay, so we have concepts much of the time. Okay, again, there's some distinctions like what we talked about with Satan, but for the most part, we have some concepts to work with, and then we got to figure out from the context of all of those other conceptual words how it all kind of makes one cohesive statement. And that sounds way more confusing than it is, and way more vague, and way more abstract than I mean for it to be. But it's true, but it's not as abstract as that sounds, okay? In most cases. Some cases it might be. Not what we're talking about right now. So ultimately it means covering, okay? To cover something. A better translation sometimes is the word firm, okay? Essentially the word is pulled out of covering something, with dirt. And so we can use this word for anything that is covered, okay? We can use it for a pit, for a grave, for a helmet if it existed, but it didn't. Well, I guess it did, but anyway, not the way we have them today. So it can be mystery, and that's the one that's the furthest away from the word that we would normally see it as, which would be pit, right? But it's the same concept. It's still to cover something. It's still to bury something. It's still traditionally rooted in death, but it's also rooted in, things being buried, things being hidden, things being covered. I know I'm being repetitive, and I mean to be, because this entire study is going to be extremely repetitive. I hopefully am being a little bit interesting right now, but the study itself is kind of boring at some points because of how repetitive it is. So let's just go with example 1 through 5, okay? And this is where the word Sheol is using, and where it's never translated to the word hell, okay? And it shouldn't be, but it is the same word. And so we would look at this and we would say, okay, I'm not going to interpret that as the word hell. And that's good, okay? But what I want to do here is say yes or no to each of these passages. Would you interpret this as hell or not? Yes, no, And and then from there, if the answer is yes, or if we thought the answer is yes, then we need to start building, because that's the first time it's mentioned, right? So that's when we got to start saying, okay, what is hell? Okay? But for now, just is this talking about something like hell, or is it talking about something else? Okay? So Genesis. Okay, let's start there. Genesis chapter 37. Okay, so we're 37 chapters in before the word Sheol is even mentioned. Okay? Chapter 37, verse 35. And all of his sons and all of his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, For I will go down into Sheol unto my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him. Okay? So if you don't know what this passage is talking about, and I encourage you to pause this and look things up, that's the beauty of having a video. We're talking about Jacob's sons, right? They've just, we're talking about Joseph, okay? So Jacob's sons have sold Joseph, their younger brother, into slavery to the Egyptians, okay? They brought the coat of many colors to their father, soaked in pig's blood, and they told him that Jacob had been killed. So now Jacob is in mourning, right? And he says, and I'm going to read the verse again, okay? And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him. So to Jacob, Joseph is dead, right? And not just dead, like he's been attacked by a wild animal, killed. This is his beloved son. Here's the coat of many colors he made for him. It's all covered in blood. And and the sons and the daughters, sons who participated in this act, they're coming to him, and they're trying to comfort him, and he says, I will go down, so the word down, okay, I'm going to descend into Sheol where my son is. I'll go to Sheol to my son mourning. You know, like a time of mourning, not morning time, okay? If anybody was confused on that. So he's mourning, right? He's grieving for his son, and he's saying, I'm gonna go down into Sheol to find my son, and I'll be, I'm gonna go down mourning to find him. Okay? So it's hard to believe that Jacob is saying that his son is in hell, or that he will go to hell mourning his son. Okay? And I suppose you could loosely try to grasp at straws to say that maybe he is. No interpretation has interpreted this to the word hell, by the way. But, if we were going to try to just really reach on it, we could say, that he is just so afflicted that he just knows that he failed his son, and he's going to go to this place of eternal torment and be there forever, okay? And he's going to go there, and he's going to be mourning his son because he loved his son more than he loved God. And we can actually build a hell out of this passage where no one has, okay? And that's how easy it is to start building hell out of it, because we're coming from all these preconceived notions, okay? But it's definitely not declaring what hell is, okay? If this were hell. But it very clearly, defines the grave, okay? So if we say, I will go down into the grave unto my son mourning, thus his father wept for him, it obviously has a lot more of a flow, it makes sense. If we translated that to pit, we would still think grave, right? For I will go down into the pit unto my son mourning. For I will go down into the covered place unto my son mourning. I will go down and be covered, finding my son in my mourning. So there's different ways we can interpret the word, but they all fit, But if it says, for I will go down into hell unto my son mourning, thus his father wept for him, it would sound a little off, It doesn't really feel right to say that there, right? Okay? So then in chapter 42, 38, we're kind of having the same type of thing. A really similar passage, okay? And again, I'll read it twice, so we'll read it, we'll give context, we'll go back, okay? And he said, my son shall not go down with you. This is Genesis 42, 38. And he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If mischief befall him by the way in the which ye go, then shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol. So the context is Joseph is risen to power. Joseph's disguised himself from his brothers, is summoning his youngest brother Benjamin, right? Hopefully we're familiar with this story, okay? Bible studies don't tend to do as well if we don't know the Bible. So Joseph's risen to power, disguised himself, summoned Benjamin. Jacob's troubled by the request coming from Pharaoh's house. And he says here again that his grief and sorrow, not his sin, will bring him down to Sheol. Okay? So he says, no, my son shall not go with you. His brother's already dead and left, and he's left alone. Like, he doesn't have his brother. And if something bad happens in the way, then you're going to bring my gray hairs all the way down to the grave. But if we said, you will bring my gray hairs down to hell, it it's harder, and I get it. Some people can be so hard on themselves that they can be condemning themselves to a place like hell, right? Or saying, I don't deserve heaven. So if we have a heaven, hell again, we can start extrapolating this and saying that this is hell based on our preconceived notions. But again, we're in a passage that has never been interpreted to the word hell. And there's a reason I'm being neutral on this, okay? I'm saying, because our logic has to be working as we work through this, okay? So I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit too. All right? So let's just pretend that it is talking about hell. Then we would have to say, well, he's just so condemned, that he thinks he's just going to go to hell the moment he dies. And maybe we have to loosely change the wording around a little bit to say that he didn't really mean that he was going to find his son there, just that he would just constantly be looking for his son there, which goes along with the ideas that are preached where in hell you just continue to cry out for the things that you long for, right? And then we can try to go forward to Isaac being laid down, and then we can come back to Jacob and say, well, he wasn't willing to give up his son, so this is his feelings of going to hell. And, we can start to develop a concept and a theory around this to say this is hell. But again, what is hell? It hasn't defined it at all yet. And why has no interpreter ever pulled that out? Okay? So, Genesis 44, 29 through 31. And if you take this also from me, and mischief befall him, ye shall bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol. Now therefore, when I come to thy servant my father, and the lad be not with us, seeing that his life is bound up in the lad's life, it shall come to pass, when he seeth that the lad is not with us, that he will die. And thy servants shall bring down the gray hairs of thy servant our father with sorrow to Sheol. So now we have the sons repeating what the father said, okay? But they're not repeating it like a quote. They're just saying they're basically saying if this happens, our father's he's gonna pass away from grief, okay? If we insert the word hell in there instead of, talking about the grave, then we would be saying, if all this stuff happens, our father he's gonna go to hell with his grief. His grief is gonna take him to hell. And now, we still have all the same context. So now, the two where I would have said you could kind of try to pull hell out of that, out of guilt or shame or this or that, kind of comes apart right here. It doesn't work anymore. There's no way his sons would be saying, our dad's going to be so grieved that he's going to go to hell. It just doesn't even make sense, right? Okay, and again, still in the passages that were not interpreted to the word hell. And we're getting closer. Okay? So that's everything in Genesis. So we're one book into the Bible, no mention of hell, okay? So in that first book, we have so many different things happening, right? You have Cain and Abel. You have the fall in the garden. You have Cain and Abel. You have, all of these different things that happen throughout Genesis. I'm not going to list them all. But every single time that blessing and cursing, consequences, accountability, salvation's promised in the garden, there's never one time that God teaches, warns about, okay? Not in the flood, nothing. There's not a single mention of hell. And again, we would have to have some kind of a warning, right? We would have to have some kind of a teaching around what hell is, and we don't have it yet. In the entire beginnings, there's nothing. And in every warning that God gave, because he gave warnings, and he gave the whole message of salvation in the garden, right? And talked about, bruising the heel and crushing the serpent's head, and, the seed that would be the Messiah. We have all of that. No mention of afterlife. No and no mention of afterlife, really. There's the only thing we had close to afterlife was living on earth forever. If they took from the tree of life, right? They would live forever, which negates heaven and hell because you're alive forever. You're immortal, right? And so we can say a lot of that symbolism, which a lot of people believe, but a lot of people believe it's very literal. That's up to you, okay? But I would still say it's curious that in the entire first book of the Bible, our foundation for everything, right? Not a single mention of hell. At least not the hell that we teach, not the hell that we hear about. Okay? So the next time that we see this word, Sheol, is in Numbers. So we're quite a ways in, okay? We're a long way in, okay? We're all the way into the Exodus from Egypt, okay? That's huge, okay? We have gone through the whole creation account. We've gone through the rise and fall, the famines, the flood. I'm saying those out of order, but it's just as it comes to me. And then we've had the Exodus from Egypt, the plagues, all of it, and God warned Pharaoh and all of these other things, but never has He once mentioned this place called hell. Okay, and if you're getting uncomfortable, I'm sorry. I'm not here to trick you or deceive you, okay? And again, follow along, and I can give you great resources. I want to give you great resources where you can go and study this stuff for yourself, okay? But for now, I want to walk through it, and again, we're only talking about the Sheol passages right now. We're not getting into like a lot of fire passages and things like that that weren't interpreted to hell, because we tend to kind of try to interpret those to hell too. But they weren't interpreted to the word hell. So we're leaving those alone, okay? For now. I'm going to come back to a lot of that. It gets, when you get into prophetic stuff talking about fire, it gets extremely complex because each passage can be talking about something very, very different based on the context. So we're leaving that alone for now, okay? So in Numbers 16, 31 through 34. But if the Lord make a new thing, and the earth open her mouth and swallow them up, with all that appertain unto them, and they go down quick into Sheol, then you shall understand that these men have provoked the Lord. And it came to pass, as he made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground clave asunder that was under them. And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up, and their houses, and all the men that appeared unto Korah, and all their goods. They and all that appertained to them went down alive into Sheol. And the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. And all Israel that were round about them fled at the cry for them, and they said, lest the earth swallow us up also. So, if I were to only read verse 30, but if the Lord make a new thing, and the earth open her mouth and swallow them up, with all that appertaineth unto them, actually I take that back, even there, it's pretty obvious. It's talking about the ground. It's talking about the ground opening up and swallowing them. So they go down quick into Sheol. So they're going down into the pit, they're going down into the earth, they're going down into the grave, they're going down into being covered, okay? Everything we know that this word actually means, okay? But if we said they're going down into hell, okay, we could try to pull that out. And again, this is a passage where nobody has, so just playing devil's advocate. You know, we could say, well, the ground swallowed them, but we believe the word Sheol means hell, and we know that bad people go to hell. These are bad people, you know, the sons of Korah, so when the earth swallowed them, it actually took them to hell. And you could even be of the persuasion that hell is molten lava in the middle of the earth, and that screams come up if you go deep enough, and all that stuff, you know, I've heard that. So yeah, if you believe all that, those are all preconceived notions, they're all modern teachings that you're taking back to an ancient text, then you could start to say that, yeah, hey, this could be talking about hell. Again, no interpretation has ever interpreted this passage to hell, so you're doing something new there. But it could be fair from a preconceived notion. and only from a preconceived notion. Because again, this passage says nothing about afterlife. It says nothing about fires. It says nothing about regenerative skin, worms, eternal punishment. None of these things. So judgment takes place immediately. Ground literally opens up. They fall into the earth. Their houses, their goods fall into the earth, okay? And their houses and goods did not go to hell. They went into the earth because their houses and goods went to Sheol, right? With them. You can't take your house. Okay, if hell is real, right? The hell that we're preaching, because you hear the phrase, you can't take it with you when you die, right? In this concept, you can if you're going to hell, if you're going to interpret it that way. And we know that's not true, right? You can't take your possessions into afterlife, period, much less to hell. Otherwise, hell's a place where you can have your stuff. That's an interesting concept, okay? And there's ramifications to that, and no one's teaching that. And if that's true, we need to be teaching it, right? But it's not true, and we don't teach it. So, example 7, Deuteronomy, okay? And this is the first passage in one translation. I'm rusty on this part. Not many translations, and possibly only one translation, being the King James Version. I'm going to have to double check my facts on that one. But I know that it is not across the board, okay? So Deuteronomy 32, 21 through 26. This one, the interpreters in the 14th century did interpret this one occurrence of the word Sheol to mean, well, they interpreted it into the Anglo-Saxon word hell, okay, where we get helmet. But they had this concept of Hades, hell, and when they used the word hell, they were referencing Dante's Inferno, they were referencing Paradise Lost, they were referencing the selling of indulgences, or the selling of indulgences revolved around that, okay? I'm not necessarily saying that the translators were participants in selling indulgences, but we know that it happened around these translations and that it heavily influenced the translation, okay? So, they've moved me to jealousy to that which is not God. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities, and I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. So this is kind of the preparation for what's being said. That God just said, like, they're worshiping, they're saying that this is God, it's not God. They're provoking me to anger. They're vain. I'm going to move them to jealousy. So basically, I'm going to make this other nation jealous of them. I'm going to set this other nation at war with them. Okay? I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. Okay? So we have this mention of nations. Okay? We have this mention of being moved to jealousy. So, for a fire is kindled in my anger. Okay? So if I have a preconceived notion of hell, and I see a fire is kindled in my anger, okay, then my preconceived notion is, before I see the word Sheol, is going to say a fire in my anger, that's hell, right? If God is producing a fire in his anger, that's hell. Has to be, right? But, again, that's a preconceived notion. I'm going to say preconceived notion so many times you can make a drinking game out of it and get wasted, okay? Please don't do that. So, for a fire is kindled in my anger, and it shall burn unto the lowest Sheol. Okay? So, if we want to say this is hell, playing devil's advocate, we can say it's going to burn to the lowest grave. Okay? But they translate the word Sheol to hell. So they don't translate it to grave. And if they did, it would actually make more sense to call this a hell passage. Okay? because we could say, oh, this fire is so intense that it burns even beyond all the graves. It even burns below the lowest grave. Like it finds all the dead, and this is afterlife. Okay? And you see how you could logically go there. But it's, again, coming from preconceived notion. Take a drink. So, for a fire is kindled in my anger, and shall burn him to the lowest Sheol, and shall consume the earth with her increase, and set on fire the foundations of the mountains. Okay? So, from that first part, we said, well, it's going to burn lower than the lowest grave, right? But then it says, and shall consume the earth with her increase, which means harvest, right? So everything that's increasing, everything that's growing, everything that's substance for people, food, sustenance, it shall consume the earth with her increase. So we're talking about the earth. We're not talking about something away from the earth. And set on fire the foundations of the mountains. Again, we're talking about the earth. So if you want to lean towards the idea that molten lava is hell, we're still kind of on track. But, and again, that's a preconceived notion. But to make it work here, that would have to be true, okay? Because if it really is like interdimensional, if it's outer space, if it's, removed from the earth entirely, then, and it's not geographical on earth, okay? Then none of that passage works to define a hell. The only way this passage begins so far, okay, and it's gonna undo all of this in a second, but the only way that it could possibly be talking about hell to this point is if hell geographically does exist in the center of the earth and melts and burns the bases of the mountains, okay? And if you believe that, then you're still so far in this verse justified to say this could be talking about hell, but it's again, if it's talking about hell for the first time, which according to the interpretation it is, okay? If it's talking about hell for the first time, then this is what we know about it so far, is that it finds the lowest grave, burns deeper than the lowest grave, right? This is just God's anger. This is God's fire, right? The fire of God's anger burns below the lowest grave and sets on fire the foundations of the mountains and even destroys crops and harvest. Okay? So volcanoes maybe. But this is what we have. I mean, this is what we can pull from the passage if we're going to start a teaching here. So this is what we know about hell so far, is that it's in the center of the earth, it melts the mountains, and destroys crops, okay? So, and I don't believe that, but I'm just, again, playing devil's advocate here. So, moving on, and set on fire the foundations of the mountains, that's where we left off. I will heap mischiefs upon them. That could be hell, right? Torment, eternal torment, mischiefs, that works. I will spend my arrows on them. Maybe. I mean, we just had mention of a nation being provoked to jealousy, right? And that makes a lot more sense with arrows, but if we're talking about hell, one, I don't know why it was started with talking about another nation, but let's say it was. So if this is talking about hell, then now we have arrows into hell, okay? So, skipping around in the Bible and just pulling out of that big grab bag of what we can use to kind of like put together our stuff. So we reach way, way, way into the future, and here's a passage where somebody's saying like, our faith stops the fiery arrows of the devil, right? Or of the enemy. So, yeah, okay, that could work. Fiery arrows, all right? So, this doesn't necessarily say fiery arrows, but we're just going to add that, we're going to add some subtext. And say that this is still talking about our preconceived notion. So I will spend my arrows upon them. They will be burned with hunger. That kind of works, okay? Yeah, you're hungry because you're still a mortal body, okay? And you're just not getting fed, but you can't die, can't starve, right? And devoured with burning heat. Definitely goes along with a lot of our hell passages. And with bitter destruction. So if I believe in worms and regenerative skin, okay, I can read that into the passage. It does not say that, but I can read it in, okay? I will also send the teeth of beasts upon them. That's not really worms. So, okay, hell has beasts. That's new. With the poison of serpents of the dust. So we have dust and we have serpents, okay? Not worms, but serpents, okay? Well, I mean, we have the garden, we have that snake, he lost his legs, he could be there. So serpents, okay. I'm sorry, I'm starting to get kind of sarcastic. If that is coming across as rude, it's not intentional. I don't know how else to deliver this, but just know my intention is not to be mean. Okay, so I'll send the teeth of beasts upon them. So these beasts have teeth. Poisonous serpents of the dust. The sword without. Without what? So when it says without, it means outside the walls. Like the sword outside your walls. So in hell, do we have a mansion? Do we have a kingdom? Do we have a place that there would be a sword, like dangers outside of where we're at in hell? And terror within shall destroy both the young man. So young men can go here. The virgin, interesting. So the virgin can go here. The suckling also, which is a baby. Okay, so babies are here. I have heard some people preach that babies can go to hell. I am deeply offended by that. But I once preached that, offended somebody. I get it. So I'm just saying, if you're going to say this is a hell passage, then you have to believe that babies go here. Okay? Also with the man of gray hair. Okay. So we've got every age. We have virgins. And then he says, I said I would scatter them into corners. I don't know what that has to do with hell. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. So I don't really know how any of that works for hell, okay? We have a rebuke against Israel because of serving false gods. And this is explicitly towards Israel. They're making themselves gods to themselves, and God says the fire of my anger will burn to the depths of Sheol. Okay. He then says they'll be burned with hunger. And then he says they'll be devoured by burning heat, bitter destruction. And then he clarifies the destruction is teeth of beast, poison of serpent, sword without, terror within. And these will be that mode of destruction. Okay. That's not our normal teaching about how your destruction occurs in this place we call hell. It's actually quite different. Okay? So teeth of beast, poison of serpent, sword without, terror within. This means that hell would be some kind of geographical location, and you would be terrorized without and within. But when he's talking about being burned with hunger, okay, he already said he was going to burn the crops. He already said he's going to bring another nation against them with jealousy. So if we interpret the word Sheol to grave here, it makes so much more sense. They have moved me to jealousy with what isn't God. They provoke me to anger in vanity. I'll move them to jealousy with those which are not a people yet. I'm adding the word yet. I'll provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. For a fire is kindled in my anger and shall burn into the lowest grave. Or the lowest pit, right?
and shall consume the earth with her increase. That's famine. Set on fire the foundations of the mountains. I will heap mischiefs upon them. I'll spend my arrows upon them. They shall be burned with hunger. So that's all warfare, right? Spending the arrows, that's that other nation. They'll be burned with hunger, devoured with burning heat. Okay, that's those crops being burned up. With bitter destruction, I'll send the teeth of beasts upon them, with the poison of serpents of the dust. All of this is in the earth. All of this is what's happening in their judgment on earth as a nation. The sword without and terror within. That's Israel, okay? Terror within Israel, and the sword without Israel is coming against Israel. There's nowhere they can go to escape God's judgment in this way. And it's going to come upon everyone, right? So it's going to destroy both the young man and the virgin, the suckling, the baby, and the man of gray hairs. So this war is going to come in and it's going to consume whatever's in its way, as well as famine is going to consume everything in the way. And that's going to affect children. That's going to affect adults, everyone. I said I would scatter them into corners, okay? And that goes right back to being scattered to the four corners of the world, right? Not flat earthing it here, but we know that's a representation of being scattered throughout the world, okay? I would make the remembrance of them to cease among men. That's all prophetic, tied to older prophecies, which I'm not going into because I'm still trying to stay focused on the hell passages, okay? But we can see here that this is not about afterlife. Like, there's no clear indication about afterlife here, okay? There's nothing that really implies that we should interpret this to the word hell. It begins here in Deuteronomy. And we can see that those judgments do come in the earth, okay? Like, you can see that once this is issued, like, those things start happening, okay? And without going too far down a rabbit trail, just everything that's said in this passage happened, and it happened in the earth, okay? If this really is the very first time that hell is being mentioned, we already have the law coming into effect. We already have all of that beginning stuff happening, okay? Genesis and the Exodus from Egypt. Again, we've already talked about that. Like, hell has not been mentioned until now, and if this is the first time that it's mentioned, it's catching him off guard. But it does say the fire's created in his wrath. So if this is in fact hell, it's very different than the hell we're preaching. It coincides perfectly with what actually happened in the earth, which makes it not hell. But supposing it is, trying to play devil's advocate, we would have to say that God created hell in this moment. That this is where hell was created. That it didn't exist before this, okay? Now, we know that we had volcanoes before this. We know that we already had famine before this. We know that we already had wars with other nations before this. So, like, and none of this is new, all right? But it is new in the sense of being a new judgment, okay? A new judgment for a specific trespass that was occurring. And in a certain time, and it was executed immediately. If this is God creating a hell for all mankind and the fallen angels, why now? Why in this passage? Why at this moment? And why is it parallel so perfectly what actually takes place in the earth that matches perfectly what God said? Okay? And I'm not here to get into the ethics of what God does or doesn't do. That's for another conversation. But this judgment happened, is not about hell. And I believe it's only one translation that actually called it hell. It may also be in the NIV and Message, but I don't remember. It's been a little while since I've delved into any of this. I just kind of jumped back in and went and dulled some of my old notes because I wanted to make a video about this and kick it off. I'm going to be more elaborate later. This just took me a long time to put together the first time, and I just want to do it with a better spirit than how I delivered it the way I wrote it, so I can get the thing I wrote offline, because it's in a mean spirit. So, again, our 8th time that the word Sheol is used, okay? Or our 8th example of the time that Sheol is used is in Samuel. Okay, so 1 Samuel 2:6, and we're quite a ways into the Old Testament here. Okay, like we've got a pretty big chunk of history done. And in the law, I meant to mention that specific consequences were given throughout the 613 laws of Moses, and none of them had to do with afterlife, and none of them mentioned this word. That means something, okay? So 1 Samuel 2:6, the Lord killeth and maketh alive. He bringeth down to Sheol and bringeth up. So if this is hell, okay, then God brings someone down to hell, but he can also bring someone out of hell. Now, most teachings that we hear, you don't ever leave hell, right? So if this is hell, it's saying that God can bring you out of hell. But if we're talking about the grave, the pit, being covered with dirt, then the Lord killeth and maketh alive. Goes right along with, he brings down to the grave and he brings up out of the grave. Because now we're talking resurrection. Okay? So, example 9. I'm going to try to move a little quicker through some of these. I just don't want to lose context. So, example 9. 2 Samuel 22, 5-6, a song of David. David spake unto the Lord the words of this song, in the day that the Lord had delivered him out of the hand of his enemies, and out of the hand of Saul. When the waves of Maveth surrounded me, the floods of ungodly men made me afraid. The sorrows of Sheol compassed me about, the snares of Maveth prevented me. In my distress I called upon the Lord and cried to my God. He did hear my voice out of his temple, and my cry did enter his ears. Okay, so here we have the word being introduced, Maveth. Okay, and Maveth is another word for death. Okay, but it's not a word for the grave. It's a word that represents a violent death. So it's actually like the process of being murdered. Okay. So you're not going to use the word grave for that. You're going to use the word Maveth. And then it's interchanged with this word Sheol. Okay? But again, this doesn't talk about afterlife. Okay? When ungodly men surrounded me and they tried to make me afraid, the sorrows of death compassed me about. The snares of a violent death prevented me. In my distress I called upon the Lord, cried out to my God. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry did enter his ears. Okay? So, if we said the sorrows of hell compass me about, again, we don't have any teaching to date about what hell is, unless you want to take that Deuteronomy passage and say that that was a teaching. So here he's talking about death. The sorrows of death compassed me about. Okay? So, without being too redundant, just moving on to example 10, which is 1 Kings 2:6. Do therefore according to thy wisdom, and let not this hoar head go down to Sheol in peace. But show kindness unto the sons of Barzillai and the Gileadite, and let them be loose of eat at thy table. For so they came to me when I fled because of Absalom thy brother. So we're talking about Absalom, David, all that. And behold, thou hast with thee Shimei the son of Gera, a Benjamite of Bechurim, which cursed me with a grievous curse in the day when I went to Mahanaim, and he came down to meet me at Jordan, and I swear with him by the Lord, saying, I will not put thee to death with the sword. Now therefore hold him not guiltless, for thou art a wise man, and knoweth what thou oughtest to do unto him, but his hoar head bring thou not down to Sheol with blood. So, again, clearly this is talking about a grave, a pit. Okay, it's talking about death, not a torturous fire. Example 11, Job. This one's powerful. Okay? So Job 7:9. As a cloud is consumed and vanisheth away, so he goeth down to Sheol, shall come up no more. Clearly a reference to the grave. No torturous fire mentioned, no everlasting torment. And actually, I thought this was example 12. So example 12 is also in Job, and this is where it starts to get more powerful. Job 11:7-9. Canst thou... Actually, I'm not sure yet. I just know this is in Job. So stay with me through Job. Canst thou by searching find out God? Canst thou find out the Almighty unto perfection? It is as high as heaven. What canst thou do? Sorry, I had some stuff written there. Don't want to go into it. Different subject. Deeper than Sheol, what canst thou know? So deeper than hell. Or deeper than the grave. Okay? We could say deeper than hell if we want to go with that Deuteronomy one, right? The measure thereof is longer than the earth and broader than the sea. So we can see that he's describing like up and down. He's describing back and forth. He's describing like geographical planes of existence in a 3D space, okay? Heaven can be read different ways. That was my note that I don't want to go into. Different subject. Burning too many bridges here. Don't want to burn more. He describes distance. So yeah, nothing really about hell explicitly in that passage, but the word Sheol is definitely there, referring to going down. Okay, basically like eternally moving in any direction. So example 13, Job 14:13. So starting in verse 13, oh, that thou wouldest hide me in Sheol, that thou wouldest keep me secret until thy wrath be past, that thou wouldest appoint me a set time and remember me. So Job, hold on, I'm going to read this again, okay? And let's just insert the word hell instead of Sheol, all right? Because you're going to realize this cannot be hell. Oh, that thou wouldest hide me in hell, that thou would keep me secret until thy wrath be past, that you would appoint me a set time and remember me. So, do we really believe that Job would say to God, I just wish you would hide me in hell until all this is over, right? How would hell be better than what he's going through? Okay? And again, if we believe in hell at this point, well, Job was actually believed to be written before even Genesis was written, so... But let's say that this is all chronological, and let's say Job is actually in the right chronology, okay? So what we have here is, it can only be based on a teaching in Deuteronomy, okay? Unless we have extra biblical books, we have hidden or lost books, and some people may argue that, but it's still extra biblical and it's still based on an assumption because you don't have those missing books, okay? So you're like, well, they do believe in it, but they just didn't write its origins into the Bible. They wrote the origins of everything into the Bible, as they understood it. So why would they leave something so important out unless it's not important? And if it's not important, that's a whole nother thing, right? Why are we acting like it's important? So Job, that you would hide me in... Basically, if he's saying, if you would just cover me with dirt, if you just put me in the grave, just keep me secret from the world until your wrath is over, it makes so much more sense, right? That thou wouldest appoint me a set time and remember me. So bury me until this is all over, and don't forget to raise me from the dead. You know? That's if hell really is the worst thing imaginable, and it is what we're preaching today as we can't even comprehend how horrible it is, there's no way Job would ask to go there out of God's mercy. God be merciful and send me to hell. No, it doesn't make sense. So, example 14 and 15. If I wait, example 14 and 15, Job 17, 13 through 16. I might stop after this one and just do another part later because I think my battery's going to die. If I wait, Sheol is mine house. I have made my bed in the darkness. I have said to corruption, thou art my father, to the worm, thou art my mother and my sister. And where is now my hope? As for my hope, who shall see it? They shall go down to the bars of Sheol, when our rest together is in the dust. So, if I wait, and hell might have a ring to it here, okay? So let's go ahead and put the word hell in there. If I wait, hell is my house. I have made my bed in darkness. I have said to corruption, thou art my father. To the worm, thou art my mother and my sister. And where now is my hope? As for hope, who shall see it? They shall go down to the bars of hell, when our rest together is in the dust. Okay? You can kind of pull it from those preconceived notions to a degree. Okay? But then you have to say Job's agreeing that he's a sinner, that he's this and that, and that he deserves hell. But it still doesn't really go with the last passage where he said, please put me there. Okay? But if we say the grave, right? If I wait, the grave is my home. I've made my bed in that darkness, okay? The grave's dark, right? I've said to corruption. What is corruption? The skin being corrupted, right? We're not incorruptible. We are corruptible flesh, right? So I've said to corruption, thou art my father. To the worm. Because what happens when you're in the grave is the worm